Hi everyone, my name is Vitali Moro, and if you're planning a trip to Rome, you definitely need to watch this video until the end because it's guaranteed to save you money and a lot of stress. But before we start, I want to tell you that if you're going to Rome and want to have a photo shoot, you can message me and I'll take some great photos for you. The link to my Insta is below this video.
If you're visiting Rome for the first time, you probably already have a standard list. The Trevi Fountain, the Spanish Steps, the Colosseum, Piazza Navona, Trastevere, the Vatican. And the problem is that a similar list exists for several million other people. Today, I want to talk about the most overrated places in Rome. But there's an important point to make right away. Overrated doesn't mean bad. I'm not saying don't go to the Trevi Fountain, it's terrible. No. The Trevi Fountain is beautiful. The question is different. Is a specific place worth the amount of time, money, nerves, and expectations that a tourist spends on it? Because sometimes you look at photos on Instagram and imagine a romantic square, ancient Rome, beautiful architecture, a glass of wine nearby. And then you get there and see 5,000 people, selfie sticks, tour groups, souvenir sellers, and a line just to take a photo. So today, let's try to look at Rome a bit more soberly. What is truly worth your time and what can you possibly see in 10 minutes and move on? Let's start, of course, with the Trevi Fountain, because it's probably one of the main symbols of Rome. If someone has never been to the city, I'm almost sure that the Trevi Fountain is on their must-see list. And visually, it's hard to argue with that. The fountain itself is truly incredible. It's huge, literally built into the facade of a palace, and the square around it is very small. So when you first step out to it from the narrow Roman streets, it creates a pretty strong effect. You walk between the buildings, turn, and suddenly a massive Baroque fountain appears before you. It's really beautiful. But the problem starts about 30 seconds after you see it, because there's not much to do there. The square is small. There are a huge number of people. It's almost impossible to sit down peacefully. It's hard to take a beautiful photo. And in the end, most tourists do the same thing. They push closer to the water, toss a coin, take a photo, and leave. Meanwhile, some people specifically travel halfway across the city or plan their route to spend an hour or even more near the Trevi Fountain. In my opinion, that's completely unnecessary. I would view the Trevi Fountain as a beautiful point on the route. Come look, walk around, take a few pictures, and move on. It's even better to come either very early in the morning or late in the evening. Because the main problem with the Trevi Fountain isn't the fountain itself. The main problem is the number of people around it. The next place is the Spanish Steps. Here, perhaps, someone will completely disagree with me. But if we're talking about the ratio of the fame of a place to what you actually get, the Spanish Steps are one of my main candidates. In photos, they look very grand. The famous staircase, the church at the top, Piazza di Spagna, the Barcaccia fountain, beautiful facades around. And all of this really exists. But when someone first arrives there, their reaction is often something like, "Is that it?" Because essentially, in front of you is just a large, beautiful staircase. You go up, look down, come back down. That's it. If you're nearby, definitely stop by. If you're walking from Piazza del Popolo to the Trevi Fountain, it's a lovely point along the way. But I definitely wouldn't travel across all of Rome just for the Spanish Steps. Moreover, literally 5 to 10 minutes away, there are places that I personally find much more interesting. You can go up towards the Borghese Gallery. You can walk to Pincio for a beautiful view of the city. You can just leave the main tourist streets and wander through the old center. And quite quickly, you'll discover a strange thing. The most pleasant experiences in Rome are often not connected to its most famous spots at all. The next overrated place is Via del Corso. This is one of the main central streets of Rome. It connects the area of Piazza Venezia with Piazza del Popolo. And a huge number of tourists end up here at some point. On the map, it all looks logical. The city center, shops, beautiful buildings, and streets leading to the Trevi Fountain, the Pantheon, and the Spanish Steps. But if you want to feel Rome, Via del Corso is probably one of the worst places for that. Because at some point, it just turns into a long shopping street. International brands, crowds, shops, people going back and forth, and you can be in the very center of Rome but feel like you're on any other European shopping street. So I would use Corso solely as a route from point A to point B. The most interesting things begin when you turn off it. Sometimes it's enough to walk just 100 meters to the right or left, and suddenly most of the tourists disappear. You find small streets, old houses, little bars, workshops, courtyards. And that's where the Rome that I personally find much more interesting begins. In general, this is one of the main pieces of advice I would give to someone visiting the city for the first time. Don't be afraid to stray from the main tourist route. Rome is quite safe to explore on foot, and often the most beautiful places are found completely by chance. The next place is Piazza Navona. Here the situation is a bit more complicated, because the square itself is indeed beautiful. It's one of the most famous squares in Rome. Baroque architecture, fountains, the church of Sant'Agnese in Agone, Bernini's Fountain of the Four Rivers, the history of the ancient Roman stadium, the shape of which the square still roughly follows. So objectively, it's an interesting place. Why do I include it in the overrated category? Because an image has been created around it that you must spend a lot of time there. Sit in a restaurant, have a coffee, dine. And I wouldn't recommend doing that automatically. Piazza Navona is a wonderful place to walk through, admire the architecture, stop by the fountains, and learn a bit of history. But the establishments directly on the most touristy squares are a completely different story. You often pay not so much for the food or coffee, but for the opportunity to sit in a specific place. And that's fine if you understand that. If you want to have an Aperol with a view of Piazza Navona, go ahead. Just perceive it as buying a view. But if your goal is to eat well, sometimes it's enough to walk a few streets away from the square and the options become completely different. And this is a universal rule for Rome.
I'm sorry for interrupting your viewing. I would really like to share some exciting news with all of you today. It is that just recently, my brand new application designed for automatic language learning was officially released to the public, covering English, Italian, French, and all sorts of other languages. The main point of this tool is that the process of learning each new word is directly tied to the simple act of unlocking your mobile phone. So every single time you go to unlock your phone, a specific vocabulary word pops up right there on the screen, and you are required to type in its correct translation before you can proceed. Even if you don't know the word, you can get a hint, but you still have to write that translation. Because you unlock your phone many times every single day over the course of a month, a lot of new words really stick with you. Maybe 20 for some people, 50 for others, or even 250 for some. And after just 1 month, you will notice how you have learned a significant number of words without spending any extra time on it at all. This app is called Parolino. You can find it on the Google Play Store or download it via the link provided under this video. Unfortunately, it's exclusively available on the Android system right now, so if you have an Android device, go ahead and download the application and enjoy using it. So let's get back to the video.
Rule for Rome. The closer a restaurant is to a landmark, the more cautious I would be about that restaurant. The next place that tourists often overrate is the Trastevere neighborhood, and many will be surprised now, because Trastevere is usually recommended by literally everyone. Want the real Rome? Go to Trastevere. Want atmosphere? Go to Trastevere. Want restaurants? Go to Trastevere. And there used to be much more sense in that. Trastevere is indeed an incredibly beautiful neighborhood. Narrow streets, old buildings, ivy on the facades, small squares, bars, restaurants. Especially in the evening, it all looks very atmospheric. But popularity has done to Trastevere what happens to all trendy neighborhoods in big cities. It has become a tourist attraction in itself, especially in the central part. In the evening, there can be a huge number of tourists here, lines at popular restaurants, places that TikTok and Instagram have promoted. People specifically travel across the city to stand in line for 20 or 30 minutes for pasta because they saw a specific place on the internet, and I definitely wouldn't do that. If you come to Trastevere, walk around, turn off, look at the streets, stop by the church of Santa Maria in Trastevere, move away from the busiest squares. You can head up towards Gianicolo, but don't treat Trastevere as the only place in Rome where real Roman life exists. Rome is huge, and neighborhoods where ordinary Romans outnumber tourists are not necessarily here. The next point is the Mouth of Truth, Bocca della Verità. This is a large stone disc with a face where, according to legend, you need to place your hand. If a person lies, the Mouth of Truth supposedly bites off that hand. The place became especially famous thanks to movies and pop culture. Every day, tourists come here to take one specific photo, a hand in the mouth of the stone mask. And this is a perfect example of a place I would never put at the center of a tourist route. If you're nearby, stop by. It's interesting, unusual. Take a photo. But to spend a lot of time traveling there and then standing in line for it. In my opinion, there are hundreds of things in Rome that are more interesting. Moreover, literally nearby are the Circus Maximus, Aventine Hill, beautiful churches, and the Orange Garden. You can go up and have a completely different experience. So again, the same principle applies. The fame of a place does not guarantee that it will be your main impression of the trip. And now, let's move on to the most controversial point, the Colosseum. I'll say right away, I don't consider the Colosseum a bad or unnecessary place. On the contrary, if you are visiting Rome for the first time, seeing the Colosseum is definitely worth it. It's one of the most recognizable monuments on the planet. It's almost 2,000 years old, and the very fact that such a massive structure has survived in the middle of a modern city is impressive. But there's one thing that many tourists seem to be afraid to say out loud. In some cases, the Colosseum is more interesting from the outside than from the inside. When you first see it from the street, especially if you approach from Via dei Fori Imperiali, the scale is indeed impressive. But inside, some tourists expect to see a nearly fully preserved ancient Roman arena. Instead, they find a huge archaeological structure where they have to do a lot of imagining and interpreting. And if you're not interested in the history of ancient Rome at all, an hour inside the Colosseum can seem quite boring. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go there. It means you need to understand why you're going there. If you're interested in history, definitely. It's better to get a good guide or at least read in advance about how everything was arranged, where the spectators sat, how the underground areas worked, what happened on the arena, why the building looks the way it does today. And then it won't just be stones in front of you. But if you just want to see the Colosseum and take photos, it's not at all necessary to make the visit inside the main task of the day. Now, another overrated phenomenon in Rome, not a specific place, but a format. TikTok restaurants. This is a separate attraction of modern Rome. You can walk down the street and see a completely ordinary restaurant.
Rome is undoubtedly a beautiful city, and it's not just the architecture that's beautiful, but also the Italian culture and, of course, the Italian food. But unfortunately, in recent years, trying authentic Roman food in restaurants has become not so easy. Because of the large number of tourists coming to Rome, many restaurants have simply stopped putting in the effort, and more often you might visit and not get to taste truly authentic Roman cuisine in these establishments. So it's quite difficult for an average tourist to find a good restaurant, like the ones I and other locals of this city go to. That's why I made the decision to help you out today and created a map of restaurants for you that I personally visit and enjoy myself. It also includes cafes, bars, great photo locations, and many more things. And I want to emphasize, there's no advertising there. These are truly restaurants and other places that I personally visit myself. I've put all these maps on one website and linked it in the description below this video. Now, back to the video.
Ordinary restaurant. And in front of it, there's a line of 50 people. And nearby, there are 3 other restaurants where no one is standing. Why? Because a viral video was once filmed in one place, and now thousands of tourists come to try that one carbonara. The most interesting thing is that this doesn't mean the restaurant is bad. It can indeed be good. But Rome is a huge city with thousands of restaurants, and the likelihood that one single carbonara is so much better than all the others that it's worth standing outside for 40 minutes seems small to me. So I would use a very simple rule. If there's a huge line of tourists outside a restaurant, I walk on. Especially if my vacation lasts 3 days. Time on a trip also costs money. And spending an hour in line just because someone got 2 million views on TikTok seems like a strange investment to me. And the last overrated place is souvenir shops right next to the main attractions. Yes, this isn't an attraction, but a huge number of tourists still spend time and money there. Magnets, Colosseum figurines, aprons with David, mugs, Roman legionnaires, unusual shaped pasta. All of this can be found practically throughout the center, so buying a souvenir in the first shop across from the Colosseum is not at all necessary. Often, it's enough to walk a few streets to find similar items for cheaper. And if you want to bring something truly Italian, I would look towards food, good cheese, coffee, pasta, olive oil, wine, some regional products, things you'll actually use later. And what's interesting is that if you remove all these places we've discussed today, the question arises, where should you go? And my answer is, still go. See the Trevi Fountain, climb the Spanish Steps, walk through Piazza Navona, see the Colosseum, stroll through Trastevere. I'm not suggesting you skip the main attractions. I'm suggesting you let go of the idea that they must necessarily be the best part of your trip. Because Rome is interesting precisely in the spaces between these attractions. You walked out from the Pantheon and accidentally turned the wrong way. You saw a small church. You went inside. There was no one there at all. And inside there turned out to be an incredible interior. Then you found a small square. You sat down for a coffee. Then you walked another kilometer and suddenly found yourself at a viewpoint. And 5 years later, you might not remember how much time you spent at the Trevi Fountain, but you'll vividly remember that random evening somewhere on a small street in Rome. Perhaps that's the main idea of this video. Don't turn your trip into a competition for collecting attractions. Colosseum, check. Trevi, check. Vatican, check. Spanish Steps, check. Pantheon, check. You can see 20 famous places in 3 days and hardly see the city itself. So my ideal option looks something like this. Leave half of your time for the must-see program and the other half just for Rome, without a list, without 10 reservations, without the need to rush every 40 minutes. And perhaps that half of the trip will end up being the part you enjoy the most. Write in the comments which place in Rome seemed overrated to you personally. And if you're just planning to come here, write which place you're looking forward to the most. Maybe I'll make a follow-up video about the most underrated places in Rome that most tourists somehow never reach.